House Speaker Daniel Perez has created a special committee to look into placing property tax reforms on the 2026 ballot. House Republicans took property insurance into their own hands as they remain divided on tax relief.
This process is not about ego or pride of authorship or credit. This is about bringing the very best proposals before the people of Florida so that they have an opportunity to decide their own fate.
The committee will study the possibility of ending property tax. They will consider new tax breaks, including a $500,000 exemption against non-school property tax and a $1 million break for Floridians 65 and older. Property taxes vary by county.
There's some real consequences of eliminating property taxes in the context of everyday essential services like public education, police, and fire.
Governor Ron DeSantis announced several months ago the idea of abolishing property taxes in Florida. He wants to give all homeowners a $1,000 property tax rebate now. Abolishing the property tax will require a constitutional amendment, which will have to be approved by voters on the 2026 ballot. Akash, you were at the legislative session earlier in the process. What was the consensus then on property taxes being abolished? What were the conversations?
Well, I think as we saw this year with the devastation of hurricanes and just in general with people feeling the pain of property taxes going up, they want to fix it. And the governor announced, as you heard in your story, that he wanted to abolish it. Speaker Perez is taking leadership. He's like, let's call a committee. Let's see if we can actually let the voters decide where to put the money. $1 million tax break for the seniors is great. They're hardworking. They work, they've worked their whole lives. And they're getting back in their pockets. That'll be amazing. So I think this is an exploratory committee, but you're seeing a Republican speaker actually listen to the governor and take some action, which I appreciate.
Others would say that they're sparring, that he's not listening to the governor, that they are sparring back and forth.
Let's check some balances. I mean, just because the governor says something, normally past administrations have just kind of gone and rubber stamped it. Now he's kind of checking him and saying, well, let's think it where it works the best. And that's what the committee's going to do. And
the other important question is, where will the money come from to fund our infrastructure if this property tax is removed? Well, the homestead,
he's saying it'll come from increased sales taxes and tourist taxes, tourist fees. And I think that that's crazy, especially given the fact that the Trump administration has alienated all of our foreign tourists. Canadian airlines have reduced their seats to Florida by almost 30% so far, just now. And this is, this is just in the first 100 days. Also, I want to point out that I see this as a preemption issue. This is another way to lose more and more home rule. What will happen is local governments who prioritize things like arts and culture, for example, like the city of Tampa, or even the Hillsborough County health program for the poor, which is award-winning, those are not things that the state legislature is going to want to fund. Those are things that they're going to want to use as a cudgel on blue democratic cities, for example, and places where they see priorities that the local citizenry champions that they don't want to fund. It's a home rule problem.
That's what our local government's for, though. I mean,
right, but they won't be able to fund it if the state controls the money.
I think they'll find a way.
Mike, what's the conversation like in the newsroom covering all the different aspects of this story?
It's kind of a wait and see. It sounds almost like, are they really going to do that? And you see signs in the Florida Senate, at least, that Al Britton, the president, is kind of saying, whoa, there was a Senate study that showed, these property taxes, $30 billion every year for non-school property taxes and $20 billion for school taxes. How are you going to replace that? I think realists have to step in at some point and say, if we get rid of this, how are we going to fund the police and fire?
Right. William, are you expecting more in-depth coverage as you're looking at these items moving forward and talking more about how the schools are funded, how the roads are funded, how police departments are funded?
It's definitely going to be a major story. In the clash between Perez and DeSantis, this seems to me has the air of Perez basically throwing DeSantis a bone. DeSantis wants to cut or eliminate property taxes. Perez would prefer to cut sales taxes. there's a pretty clear ideological division there. Property taxes, essentially, people who own property are more likely to have money than people who don't. Whereas everybody, including poor people, pays sales taxes, and for poor people, buying essentials at retail is a far larger share of their income. So essentially the property tax approach benefits the affluent, whereas cutting sales taxes benefits others.
Well, not everyone who owns a home is affluent.
Of course not. Not everyone who owns a home is affluent, but they are significantly more likely to be affluent than those who don't. And for decades in this country, local governments everywhere have depended on property tax, and when you ask the local government officials why, they'll say that's where the money is. So it's a differing approach, helping working people, the lower economic classes, versus the ones who are, as you say, not guaranteed to be rich, but more likely to have economic assets.
More than folks who are just renting.